The Rabbit Club is a psychological thriller for fans of dark academia, like The Secret History is considered dark academia, for example. And my first novel, Black Chalk, was considered dark academia. So in this novel, which is out on July 8th, The Rabbit Club, it's about a California dreamer named Ali, short for Alistair. He arrives at Oxford. So it's set in the same universe as my first novel, Black Chalk. It's not exactly a sequel, it's more like an overlaps in the Venn diagram. So this California dreamer, Ali, arrives at Oxford. He's determined to reconnect with his mega famous British rock star father, who abandoned him as a very small child, like before the age of 2. And Ali wants to reinvent himself. While he's at Oxford, he pursues this mysterious secret society, kind of secret club. But the way the novel goes is he finds that membership might come at too high a price. So that's the idea of it. As far as it being a puzzle, the puzzling element is like Black Chalk, it's split into two halves. There's a part set back in 1994, which is the year Kurt Cobain died. It actually opens up the very first sentences about it being 6 months after the death of Kurt Cobain. Um, and then there's another part set in 2018, which is a professor at an upstate college in New York, a lot like Vassar, if you know Vassar at all, or but maybe the location is more like Bard because it's right on the river. Bard's right on the Hudson River. Um, so I started writing these two sections. I had no idea how they were related to each other whatsoever. Um, so that was the puzzle I set myself there. And when I worked it out, I kind of resisted it for a while because I was like, I can't get away with this. There's no way this is going to work. I think I like a challenge as well as a puzzle. And finally, I worked out how I could make it work as a kind of to bring these two stories together in a way that was really satisfying, or it's certainly satisfying to me. And I've seen a few early reviews, and I think some people have found it really satisfying when they, excuse me, when they find out how these two seemingly completely separate stories are actually not separate whatsoever. Jel is so he's Gerald, is his birth name, and goes by either Jerry or Gel. That's a British thing. I don't think many people do it so much now. Like certainly when I was growing up, I there would be people who would go by the name of Gel, who were either Jerry or Gerald. So yeah, Jel McCain is this world famous rock star. So Ali, his son, who Jel abandons like before he's 2 years old, has this really weird upbringing because he realizes there are super fans of the band. Jel McCain fronts a band called the Pale Fires. There are super fans of this band who know more about Ali's father than he does because they've read every book and perhaps you wrote one of the books about Jel McCain, uh, possibly. And also strange for his upbringing is, he can listen to his father's music, he can watch videos of him, but he has absolutely no contact with him. When Jel walks out, Jel is gone. Um, so that was really my setup as far as Ali goes. So part of the reason he goes to Oxford is Jel McCain has a mansion just 10 miles from Oxford, and he figures, I'm going to try and reconnect with him at some point. So he gets on a bus, and then he has to trek to this mansion to try and reconnect with his father, who Jel McCain is kind of, I would say, a kind of hybrid of Ozzy Osbourne and Mick Jagger. Um, so I grew up 30 miles from London, and just another 15, 20 miles up the road closer to London is where Mick Jagger is from, a place called Dartford. Um, so, Jel McCain actually comes from where I grew up, and it's the first time I've actually written a character who comes from the area I grew up in. So I had some fun doing that because I have a roughly neutral accent. Um, if I spoke the way most of the people did when I grew up, it would sound a lot different. So I had fun exploring like this accent I never picked up, and lots of the words I heard growing up in the 70s and 80s that Americans wouldn't understand at all. It turns out that Jel, sends checks to. So the reason Ali ends up in California is his mother is a Texan. Um, Jel sends checks, but she never really demands anything too much of him. She's busy trying to be an actress in LA and failing miserably. He knows he has many sons. You know, he's the kind of rock star who has spread his seed quite liberally. And, he has, I think he has 7 acknowledged children before Ali comes along, but there are a bunch of children who are probably his who are unacknowledged. When Alistair turns up at Oxford, he's actually heard of the Saracens, which is like an exclusive, they're called dining clubs in Oxford, but they're a lot more than that. You know, they might go and dine together, but they do a lot more than just eat dinner together. There's a very famous club in Oxford called the Bullington Club, and 2 of our recent prime ministers in Britain were members of the Bullington Club, Boris Johnson and David Cameron. You can look up, there's a very famous photo that they're both in where they're wearing this kind of almost kind of like the kind of morning dress that someone would wear at a wedding, but with very bright waistcoats and tails and bow ties. Um, they're very famous for doing stuff like going to restaurants and then for a joke, what they do is they smash the restaurant up. So anyone who belongs to this club is incredibly rich. And then the restaurant manager comes in and is, what are you doing? And they just hand him a very large envelope of money. Um, like, there you go, that's for smashing your restaurant up and not reporting us to the police. So the Saracens is kind of like that. They're they're not actually the Bullingdon Club. They don't do the violent stuff, but they do wear top hats. Um, and they have secrets, which I'm not going to say what their secrets are because that's something you have to discover in the book. But they're all very rich people, and they join this club so that they can stay connected with each other later in life and do each other favors. Ali wants to join because he's got this famous rock star father, even though he doesn't really have any connection with him. He can drop his name and try and find his way into the Saracens, buy all the uniform, hopefully get given the top hat when he makes it inside. His roommate at Oxford is a member of the Saracens. We find out he has a very famous politician father. And Ali also gets to make friends with um, another student who goes by the name T-Bone, um, because his name is Thomas de Bone, T-Bone, um, whose father is the richest banker in Britain. So Ali begins moving in these elite circles, but as I mentioned to you, the price of membership he pays might end up being something terrible.